Welcome back. Welcome back. Before we get into this episode, I would like for you guys to at least, if you can, share, like, subscribe, hit the notification button so you'll know when a new episode drop. Today we'll be covering a lot of stuff in regards to what's going on in the cannabis green space from east to west. So let's jump into the first one that we're talking about, which is with our Biden. So Biden DOJ must explain insulting illogical motion and medical cannabis patients gun right lawsuit filing from Florida's officials say. The Justice Department requests to dismiss a lawsuit over the federal ban on medical cannabis patient firearm rights is rife with contradiction and represents an insulting, illogical, and a historical legal perspective. A new motion from attorneys representing Florida's Agriculture Commissioner and medical cannabis patients says DOJ filed its motion to dismiss the case last month. And advocates were taken aback by the content of the legal argument, which at point drew indirect and stigmatizing parallels between state-licensed medical cannabis patients and violent felons, people with mental illness, and panhandlers. The department presented those controversial analogs in this response to an amended complaint that the plaintiffs filed. They cited a recent U.S. Supreme Court case concerning gun restriction in New York. In that case, the court effectively said that gun laws must be generally consistent with the intent of the framers of the Constitution and the historical context of the original 1791 ratification of the Second Amendment. So basically, there's a 37-page response that I've posted a link to. If you want to learn more about what this is about, please do check it out. Now, here's another thing that's going on the West Coast that I wanted to bring up is armed cannabis farm inspections in the southern Humboldt County resurfaces trauma for legacy growers. So in recent weeks, California Department of Cannabis Control, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and State Water Resources Control Board agents have been traveling on unmarked vehicles to licensed cannabis farms in southern Humboldt County to conduct armed inspections, according to the agency official and cannabis cultivators interviewed by Cannabis Business Times. Many Humboldt County farmers and industry members are shaken. They are calling the inspections traumatizing for the complaint cultivators and their families, reminiscent of the prohibitionist raids throughout the project campaign against marijuana planting, and also which began in the 1980s, and Operation Green Sweep raids in the 1990s. So it seems that California is up to their no good again when it comes to the states, just going to war against the plant. So let's talk about the CAURD license in New York. Basically, I touched upon the whole detail of it in my last episode, and this is just to kind of refresh of what's going on with it. On August 25th, 2020, after weeks of promotion by the New York Office of Cannabis Management, the application window has finally opened for adult use cannabis dispensaries license in the Empire State. These retail privilege known as Conditional Adult Use Retail Dispensary CAURD license are a key component of the State Seeding Opportunity Initiative and further the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act goal of social and economic equity throughout the state cannabis industry. So one up and a big up to New York for, keeping their word and doing what they need to do in regards to allowing people who have been harmed by the drug war, people who've had felony for cannabis that are nonviolent, to get the first opportunity to get in there and start a retail space in New York. So good luck with that, New York. So Michigan, they decided to lower the age from 21 to 18, depending on the situation. So we're going to run through this article in a little bit. Not going to give too much on it, but basically what's going on here is college age students interested in cannabis studies could soon be able to work with cannabis in the classroom setting on our bill currently before the House Regulatory Reform Committee. House Bill 6061, sponsored by Representative Kenneth Coleman and D. Wadeland, would amend the State Marijuana Act to lower the minimum age to work with substance in certain capacities from the current age of 21 to 18 years and older. Now, at the time, majority of the residents voted to make it legal for adults aged 21 and older to possess, use, and grow their own cannabis. Under the legislation, a person 18 years and older would be allowed to possess, consume, purchase, or otherwise obtain cannabis, while also being allowed to process, transport it, or sell it, but only if doing so in an agent-specified marijuana license. It would also open up the possibility for an 18-year-old to volunteer for working at a cannabis establishment, also lowering that age threshold down to 21. Now, in regards to this bill, since it's been sent to the House of Regulatory Reform Committee, where it's received a hearing on Tuesday of June 14th, there, Coleman said the Michigan was sitting on more than $3 billion of cannabis market, which employs roughly 32,000 individuals. Not to mention amount of research being done at higher educational levels at various colleges and universities across the state, such as Northern Michigan University was the first institute in the nation to offer a degree in cannabis studies. Other cannabis-related studies also offered at Lake Superior State University, Grand Valley State University, and University of Michigan. Altogether, Michigan is the fourth largest cannabis industry in the nation. We have folks, young people who are these college programs or who are trying to start their career off, who are unable to get involved in the industry because they might be 18, 19, or 20, Coleman said. We want to give the young people an opportunity to learn on the job, to start their career, and to become successful people in the society. These are good paying jobs, and we want to see people have equal opportunity. The concept does have the industry support. Robin Schneider, executive director of Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, told lawmakers the bill enables the medical cannabis side of the industry to expand its employment pool. When Michigan Marijuana Facilities License Act was first enacted back in 2016, Schneider said that the legislature set the age of employment at 18 for state licensed medical facilities, but the drafters of the State Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act later wrote that minimum age for both employment and use is 21 years or older, creating a sort of a legal conundrum. So, looks like, they wanted to do it originally, but it didn't happen because they wanted to keep the age of 21. Now they're revisiting this, and it looks like it might be a positive thing where, you can get people who are really want to get into the industry at a younger age. That way we can expand the job opportunities for them. So Vermont, discussing the future of legal cannabis sales in Vermont. The state of Vermont is now less than 1 month away from the beginning of recreational marijuana cannabis sales. The start of sales marks a huge shift in policy and makes Vermont the 19th state in the country with regulated consumer market for cannabis. For years, the medical cannabis has been available for prescription. State lawmakers then decriminalized cannabis possession before legalizing home growth for the personal use. Now, on October 1st, a first retail store will open across the state where customers will be able to walk in and buy cannabis similar to how they would purchase liquor. Cannabis products will eventually run the garment, all derived from plants that are grown here, processed, and labeled here, even lab tested in Vermont. The ideology behind this is that local grown cannabis result in a safer product and may drive at least some drug dealers away. They want to give the opportunity of Vermont to make money in Vermont versus people who don't live in Vermont bringing in their illegal drugs. And, more states should think about this. If you are allowing people to, as an adult, grow their own or give them an option to go to the store and purchase it where everything has been regulated, I think, the criminal element itself will lower. But we also have to think about what the cost is going to be, because if the cost is astronomical, then you're just going to leave the door open and create more of a situation. That's just my personal opinion on that. So looks like the woo. When I hear woo, I just think of Wu-Tang. Shout out to Wu-Tang. The Wu administration backs efforts to streamline marijuana license in Boston. So we're talking about Mayor Michelle Wu, right? Since the spring of 2020, Cannabis companies are trying to open facilities in Boston have been required to win approval from two separate city agencies, the relatively new Boston Cannabis Board and the Zoning Board of Appeal. Now, Mayor Michelle Wu administration is throwing its weight behind an effort to streamline cannabis license by shifting nearly all authorities to the 7 members Cannabis Board, part of its border pushing to simplify the process of starting up a small business in the city. Wu officials at the public hearing this week says the changes first proposed by former city councilor Lydia Edwards would make marijuana license faster and more predictable for applicants and neighbors. It's a very extensive permitting and license process that takes years and is very cumbersome and challenging for people to get through, said Baron Glaskin, a deputy director of Boston Planning and Development Agency, which convened the meeting. We feel like it's time is right to phase the zoning piece out and of it, let the Cannabis Board do what it does best. That's beautiful to hear. I mean, I know there's a lot of regulators and advocates out there who have been trying to make some changes on this, and I hope that it goes forward with a positive light. So we're going to hit down south real quick, which I appreciate that, Georgia is actually thinking about this, which is good because I believe here in Massachusetts, there are already 2 areas that you are allowed to kind of, use psilocybin as a medicine. So Georgia lawmakers talks the next step for psychedelic research for military veterans at a committee hearing. Georgia lawmakers discussed the therapeutic potential of psychedelics like psilocybin for serious mental health condition at a hearing focused on military veterans last week. Experts and people with personal experience with psychedelic treatment testified before the House of Defense and Veterans Affairs Committee, sharing information about the emerging research into the medical value of the entheogenic substance and the long-term benefits they may have for conditions like PTSD. The panel approved a bipartisan resolution in March that called for formation of the House Study Committee to investigate the therapeutic potential of psychedelics and make recommendation for reform. But as Chairman Heath Clark explained, there were more than dozens of studies committee that were created during the last session, and the psychedelic proposal was set aside and not enacted. The legislation sponsored by House Appropriates Public Safety Subcommittee Chair Bill Hitchens might not have crossed the finish line this past session, but Clark said this is a discussion we need to have and make some recommendation for this body going forward in the next session to look at moving forward and potentially seeing some funds to get the study off the ground. Clark, who is retiring and not running for re-election this year, said at the beginning of last week's hearing that it was his honor, maybe his last act of chairman of this committee, to look at some initiative, groundbreaking medical advances that are happening and ways to deliver some treatment and care for our veterans. One of the first witnesses to testify was Bodie Dunlop, a medical director from Emory Healthcare Veterans Program and co-author of an upcoming study of psilocybin-assisted therapy that is set to be published in New England Journal of Medicine. He said that the research he worked on, a groundbreaking piece, worked because it's for the first time showing that these psychedelic agents that have been what we call Schedule 1, so not for medical use, actually can have power in the treatment of psychiatric disorders when delivered as part of a psychotherapy. Ethan Whitfield, a 23-year-old Army veteran who suffered from PTSD, shared his personal story of finding success with treatment with psilocybin after exhausting traditional medical options. He said that the hearing marked the 1-year anniversary of his psilocybin treatment, and he's been sober ever since. Though he didn't go into the therapy with intention of cutting out alcohol and other substance, traditionally medicine, I do think, does have an amazing breakthrough and other benefits, he says. But with that said, I think there should be a balance struck with looking at other modalities of treatment and therapies as well. the psilocybin therapy for instance, has been used for thousands of years, Clark said. As a Christian, he feels that it's important to redeem what God has created to use it for good. Even some people may have abused this recreationally. The next legislative session in Georgia begins on January 9th. So, I think this is a good thing. I know there has always been positive effects for many of our veterans that have used psilocybin in the past. And as far as it being a therapeutic drug, I think it's a great process too. It's less harmful than the chemicals, whenever you utilize these pills, because you have these addictive qualities. And then with these pills, they also attack certain internal organs and creates more problems for the vets. So, something that's natural where it won't be as harmful to the body, I think is a great benefit. And I hope Georgia does move forward with it. Just to mention here, this shit is still happening and we got to be vigilant about this. But NYC Child Fear Agency still citing cannabis in family separation despite legalization and state policy change. What a damn shame. It's just a shame what they're doing. It's a shame that they're still separating families because of this plant. I know plenty of people who have been harmed by these type of people that go after them. And some of these people are just evil people, feeling as though that they're God. And I don't even want to really jump into this, but I hope that New York really does a 360 on this, because you shouldn't be separating family, especially in a state where it is now medical and recreational available. There should be no ramifications when, welfare comes in. Also, cannabis leaders petition for a change to Massachusetts rules around delivery. Man, oh man, I hope that they make the change. It's been crazy. If you want to have delivery, and delivery is only available right now to economic empowerment applicants and social equity applicants for a brief period of time, you have to have 2 delivery drivers in the vehicle at all times. And being that, we're social equity and we're economic empower applicant, that's really a lot of cost, because now if you're running at least 2 vehicles, that's 4 employees that you have to have, and possibly, that doesn't even talk about the other employees that you have on board. Now, that's going to cut into costs because we're just starting. Now, if you're an MSO, they got the budget for it, so they don't care. But, I think, where if you look at other delivery companies such as Amazon, this is one of the things that the petition had mentioned, was that Amazon have 1 driver and they generally have $25,000 worth of product in the vehicle, where here, our cannabis delivery company, they can only have $10,000 worth. So Amazon nearly doubles the amount of inventory and only has 1 driver taking care of the delivery. And yet, in this cannabis thing, we need 2 people. I think it's just unbiased, unfair, and I hope that the petition makes a change in regards to Massachusetts rules for delivery. So with that said, don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and hit the notification button. We'll see you on the next episode of the Terps of the BeastCoast. Take care.